Gacha spending this past month has been absolutely wild, with some crazy flips in terms of spending that I think a lot of people didn't see coming. Some of them definitely, others no idea. I want to walk you through and show you some of the things that have happened this past November in terms of gacha spending, because I think some of them are going to surprise you. Before we take a look, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, guys. Let's take a look at the games. In a crazy twist of fate, we have finally seen the notorious gacha game that we all know, some love. Genshin has returned to the #1 spot of gacha spending this month, with a return of $54 million in the month of November, beating out every other gacha, including Honkai Star Rail, which we'll get back to in just a second. Those are some insane numbers. I mean, Genshin has always been pulling in some crazy high numbers, but 54 million is just absolutely insane, especially when you consider this is just mobile spending. This is global plus Japan all lumped into one spending category, so it's to be expected to some degree, but it still absolutely baffles me that just on mobile alone, they're pulling in those kind of numbers. That's not PC, that's not console. That's not even CN numbers either. It's just crazy. Now, some of you might be wondering, if you haven't been keeping up totally with Genshin, how the heck did they pull in those kind of numbers? Well, it's quite obvious, actually, because the long-anticipated Hydro Archon was finally added into the game. Furina came to Genshin Impact. And look, I don't think anybody was surprised at the numbers that actually came through once you take that into consideration. Archons always do well if you look at the spending history, even the ones that initially people were unsure about, not getting into that whole debate. But I think that's to be expected a little bit, but you know, game respects game, and like, that's crazy numbers. But one thing that I think is absolutely hilarious, and it's so funny to me, but the #2 spot this time around actually goes to Nikke. Nikke came in at 30 million in the month of November just on mobile globally, and it beat out Honkai Star Rail, which only brought in 20 million. That's just so funny. Like, everybody memes on Nikke so hard for like the kind of game that it is and what people call it, but the fact that it's pulling in these kind of numbers over Honkai Star Rail, which is like a beautifully polished game with fantastic characters and gameplay, it's just hilarious. It's just so funny to me. If you're curious as to why they pulled in those kind of numbers, Nikke just went through its first year anniversary where they dropped a absolutely busted unit called Red Hood. I'm not going to show her on screen because the video is probably going to get demonetized if I do, but she's an absolutely busted character, was kind of game-changing in some ways, brought in some new mechanics that people weren't really expecting. There was some minor controversy and changes from her preview to her launch, but regardless, I'm not surprised at how much spending came through on that because it was a pretty cool anniversary. They did a pretty good job with it. Tons of free pulls. Hoyoverse, take note. But Honkai Star Rail came in with only 20 million, a massive drop from 45. You can clearly see the shift in spending from Honkai Star Rail back to Genshin. Why is that? What happened in Honkai Star Rail? Well, Honkai Star Rail's patches, they kind of cross between months when they come through. And during that time, we had the Jolted Awake from a Winter Dream patch that came through that featured Topaz, and she was featured on the second half, while Jing Liu was featured on the first half. Jing Liu had some crazy spending, and she was highly anticipated. So that's why Honkai Star Rail did crazy on the previous month's report. However, on the second half with Topaz, she did not fare as well. I think a lot of people were expecting more from her kit in terms of featuring Topaz when it seemed like it was Numby plus Topaz, meaning like Topaz isn't really even the star of the show. She also had really niche gameplay of like a follow-up attacker to enable follow-up attacking builds. It's really kind of niche team building as well. And then not everybody loved her character she was portrayed in the story. So I think all three of those things kind of coming together off the tail end of Jing Liu, who everybody was going so hard for. Braxophone needs to keep it in his pants.
Oh! Sorry, couldn't contain myself.
It's not surprising to me that that spending has shifted over to the Genshin side, especially off the back of the Archon. But again, one final shout out to Nikke. That's just so funny. That's so funny to me. That's it for the top 3 games. You know, the usual suspects are coming through, kind of to be expected. But let's take a look at a few other ones that people have been interested in. Arknights has gone through a massive spike, going from 1.9 all the way up to 8 million on their end. I'm not entirely sure the specifics in terms of characters or if something that might have come through on the event side that would have encouraged that. But I wonder if it's in part maybe with some speculation of Arknights Enfield and kind of the IP getting a little bit of an influx of new players who might be interested in both. I wonder if that could have contributed to some of the factors there as well. One little addition to Arknights is that was just the JP side. Global also jumped from 1.3 to 4 million, so a pretty significant increase on both sides. Epic 7, one of my first gacha games ever, still staying steady at 3 million. If you guys are interested in a video where I just kind of walk through my account to see where it sits, let me know in the comments down below if you guys even actually care. You probably don't. That's fine. Blue Archive JP dropped from 9 million to 6 million, and then on the global side, 1.7 up to 2.9. Interesting contrast there. But one I'm interested in is Reverse 1999. I have yet to actually give that game a try, but it seems like it seems to be doing pretty well, going from a 1.1 million up to 2 million. Seeing a game that's gone through kind of the new game hype and it's still increasing in spending, I think is a great sign to see for that game. I've heard nothing but good things about that game. Everybody seems to give it like amazing reviews for like the story, the gameplay, and the characters. I think they just dropped the Tooth Fairy, who's got a really twisted look to them. I don't know a ton of specifics about that, but great to see another game kind of come in and carving its own path with Reverse 1999. Azure Lane on the global and JP side, staying pretty steady, a bit of a jump on the global side, but pretty much even on JP. But now let's get to what I think a lot of you want to hear about who subscribe to my channel. Let's take a look at the PGR side on the global and JP side, as well as some of the competitors, that being Aether Gazer and Honkai Impact 3rd. I would argue they're probably the most direct competition to PGR. If you can think of some other games that might fall into that kind of competition category, let me know in the comments down below, and maybe we can look at focusing on that in next month's report when we're looking at the new year and looking at December. Honkai Impact 3rd has gone through a pretty expected drop of going from 700,000 to 500,000 on the JP side and hitting a small little bump on the global side, going from 800 to 900,000. So a combined 1.4 million, very respectable in the gacha community. Still a far cry from their other IPs, which is really interesting to think about it, but it was their first one. It was a little more niche and didn't quite have the blow up that Genshin and Honkai Star Rail did. But conveniently, all lumped together, we've got Punishing Grey Raven Global, Aether Gazer, and JP. Punishing Grey Raven Global went from, 700 to 300,000, more than a 50% drop. And then on the JP side went from, 500 to 200,000, meaning a combined income between both sides of 500,000. Pretty crazy in terms of a contrast of drop, but Aether Gazer seemed to stay steady at their 300,000. Now, some of you may have looked at those numbers and gone, oh my gosh, look at that spending. What the heck happened? Actually, I think it's pretty explainable. Let me tell you why. For those of you that don't know, JP is not actually synced with CN or with Global. JP came out halfway in between CN and Global. So they're on a completely different patch from the Global side entirely. Now, the Global side, if you've been playing with PGR for a little while now, you know we just went through Bambinata. The Left Unsaid patch that included Bambinata, she's basically free. Like, not entirely, but if you've had blue cards that have been saved up, or you spent a little bit of black cards to do one single 10 pull to get one copy, or you may not have even pulled at all because she's farmable in this patch, of course the spending was going to drop. I think that is 100% completely expected. We got the tail end of Bianca Stigmata that crossed into November, but it pretty much has been exclusively Bambinata. And I think a free A rank being released in that way is completely expected. I think we're gonna see a pretty significant flip come next patch when we get Spiral of Chronos with Lee Hyperreal. I know there's a lot of people that are arguing about like the skip, not skip debate. Rexland's been getting flamed a little bit. I think that's kind of silly, but regardless, I think Lee Hyperreal is gonna have a really good month in terms of spending coming up. Just wait and see. But on the JP side, 500 to 200,000, what the heck happened there? Well, actually, The same thing. If the dates and information I have are correct from the JP Twitter side, they're coming off of the Floating Reverie, where they literally also just had a free A rank unit get released with Han Ying. Now, don't get me wrong. Han Ying's a great unit, but she's also an A rank that you can spend basically 110 pull on the basic R&D using blue cards that you probably have saved up because you've already been hoarding them for Lamia, who's coming up in a little while after that. So I think that also makes total sense and completely accounts for why that would be the case. Their next patch that they're going into is going to be with number 21 Feral Scent. I don't know what the localized name is going to be, but as of right now, she's number 21 Feral Scent, who is a lightning amplifier that does become part of the meta lightning team. So I think she's also going to do very well during that time on the JP side. So I think when we're looking at the report come this January, looking at December, I think both Global and JP are going to have a massive boost in terms of spending. So everybody deactivate the alarms, everybody stop panicking, PGR is going to be just fine. To round off our video, let's look at the bottom games of this month because I think it's always interesting to take a look at. In our bottom three, we've got Artery Gear coming in at 30,000, $1,000 more than the previous. Black Clover M coming in at 20,000 on its launch, and Hegan Ruth Hill at 15,000. Now, Black Clover M, that is not an accurate reading here. Black Clover M launched on November 30th. So that just means in kind of like the first day of the game going live, on the global side specifically, they pulled in a quick 20K. So in one day, they made more than the entire month for Hegan Ruth Hill. I think it'll be a pretty interesting month for them. I still have no idea how Hegan Ruth Hill is alive because that's global and JP. That's what the purple square means there. And they pulled in 15K. How? Who is still playing this? I don't know. I literally know 0 people who are still playing Hegan and Ruth Hill. Nothing against the game. It was fine when I played it. But what the heck? That makes 0 sense to me. Makes absolutely 0 sense to me. Oh, you know what? Seeing here now on the JP side, we can see Black Clover M just pulled in 150K on the JP side. Looks like up from 130 from the previous month on that. So I think they're doing pretty well. I'll be interested to see what Global pulls in though still. I thought I'd check out a curiosity as well. Somehow Tower of Fantasy still jumped from 600 to 800,000 globally. So that's mobile on JP and global. That's crazy to me, especially now that they've announced that they're basically like rebooting the game. Like they're pulling a Realm Reborn here and just like completely relaunching it. So I mean, like, I don't know, we'll see what happens there. I wonder if you can like port anything over to the relaunch because like I've got characters and stuff in there, and if it's like a good launch, I don't know, maybe I'll check it out. I don't know why people are still spending on it though. That doesn't make any sense to me. But that's gonna be it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What things surprised you about spending from this past month? Were there any games I didn't mention in this video that you thought was really interesting? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate that. I'd also appreciate if you could like and subscribe to the channel, guys. It helps the growth of this channel and continue on with making the content that we are here. Come along for the journey. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.